of October. Can you believe that the year's gone through that fast? Well, it has, and we have plenty to cover. So instead of waiting the way we usually do, I think we're going to get started right away. We're going to do our update on the federal funding, which there's activity again, and a quick mention on the Leaders in Housing Counseling National Meeting, which is shaping up very nicely, thank you. And student loan debt, we just started the webinars. We'll talk just briefly so people know what the opportunities are. And then we'll dive into the meat of our meeting, internet marketing and Google AdWords. We have Leah Coldham and Donna Van Nies, who are experts in this and have been looking into how to make this work. And I think we'll get a lot out of that. And then we're going to start our conversation about, or maybe continue our conversation about, what will foreclosure counseling look like post-HAMP. And we have a few people from the field, and we'll start thinking about some things what groundwork we should be laying now to make this into a more efficient, sustainable business that will actually help our clients more. So lots to cover, and of course we'll do a quick plug for joining NHRC afterwards. All right, well, let's get into it. So Matthew, federal funding update, where are we at? What's happening?
Yeah, so I think folks on the call probably heard the really big news last week, which is that Speaker of the House John Boehner announced that he will be stepping down as House Speaker. That he was somewhat kind of forced out by he'd been wrestling, as folks on the call know, with the kind of far right Tea Party folks in the House who have been making it really difficult for him to bring past bills with that were kind of compromises that the Democrats and moderate Republicans could get behind because he was getting so much pressure from his right. So he finally, it seems like, decided he had had enough and announced that he was going to step down. Originally, it was going to be at the end of the year. Now he's going to be at the end of October. What that meant for federal funding, what that means for federal funding, first, it paved the way for Congress yesterday to pass a short-term CR that will fund the government through December 11th and avoid a shutdown that would have begun today if they hadn't gotten that done yesterday. So he was able to pass it largely with Democrats voting and not including controversial provisions on particularly funding for Planned Parenthood. So we avoided a shutdown. The government's funded through December 11th. What Boehner leaving for the kind of longer term and federal funding going forward is a little less clear. His likely replacement is Kevin McCarthy, who has been second in the House leadership for the Republicans. He is somewhat more closely associated with the Tea Party, and certainly, I mean, my read is that the Tea Party will see Boehner speaking down as kind of emboldening them, and I think they're going to expect the Kevin McCarthy or whoever the next speaker is, they're going to expect to have some pull with the next speaker. So it kind of, I mean, my read is it makes compromising going forward, even on must-pass bills like federal funding, somewhat more difficult. It seems like it almost certainly makes a big compromise like the deal that Paul Ryan and Patty Murray reached a couple years ago. It makes that, I would say, less likely. It may make a longer term, full year continuing resolution more likely, which folks that were on the call 2 weeks ago will remember that while that's a net positive for our narrow interests in terms of funding NFMC in particular, it's hugely problematic for other major programs, in particular Section 8 vouchers, which would remain level funded despite there being pretty increased need for those. So we'll see how this plays out over the coming months. There will be negotiations at the highest levels. The one other thing is that Boehner has said that he's not just going to run out the clock until the end of October, that he will try to get as much done as possible. There's a few must-pass things coming up in the next few months, including raising the debt limit, federal funding, passing a budget. It seems very unlikely that they get that done before he leaves in October, but they may try to, as having him as around is the best chance they have of reaching agreement. But it'll be hard for that to happen in October. So I think that's all I've got.
Good. Okay. So quick heads up on our Leaders in Housing Counseling National Meeting in DC. We are talking with some key policymakers in our work about joining us. So as we learn more, we'll be announcing it. But please rest assured, I think it'll be a very high-level discussion, opportunity to move the dial forward as they have been in the past. And so really want to encourage people to set aside the time and come to DC for the meeting. We've scheduled it for December 10th, and thanks to NeighborWorks, they will actually provide the meeting space. It'll be in the Convention Center in DC, and we will I think have a pretty valuable day of it. So for members of the National Housing Resource Center, we'll have our morning meeting and lunch and some special presentations and conversations during those. And then we'll have the open meeting for everybody from 1 to 5:30 in the afternoon. And 6 o'clock we will have a reception, and as people have often told us how valuable the networking part of all this is, a lot of that will be an opportunity for people to socialize and get together. We're hoping to do it a little bit differently than last year, which was an awful lot of fun, and I agree, it was great. It was a brew pub and great food and actually very, very good beer. But it was pretty loud, and we ended up not being able to do any kind of talk and summary at the end. So we're going to see if we can get a different venue. We're talking with some sponsors, and but whatever it is, it'll certainly involve your ability to get together, and we hear that, and that's valuable for all of us. And we may do some things the day before as well to take advantage of people coming into town. So to that point, we'll circulate your registration links again first of next week, but please plan on coming. You know, it's typically 80 to 100 of the top leaders in the housing counseling field, and these are very, very valuable for us, and I think they're very valuable for our work, and hopefully valuable to you to come as well. And then we had our first student loan debt webinar on Tuesday. It was a packed house, and we're repeating it again this coming Tuesday. There are very few seats left, but there are a few seats if you have staff members you want to be on. We have a maximum of 500 slots, and we're at like 420. So if you have staff people that you would like to have get this training, please register them for the second round. And in fact, all the first rounds are overbooked at this point, and so only if you've got one of the schedules that have all the slots on them, only do the second set, because the others are really overbooked. If it turns out that you can't get into the first session, if you get in a little bit late because we crossed the 500 number, just go back and register for the second round. I'm sure we'll be cutting it close, but hopefully we won't have to turn anybody away. But if it happens, you know, you just use the second round to get it. We're having a very good response. I thought the quality of the training was very high, and we've gotten very good reviews on it. We will do a second set of these in 2016, and also in January there's going to be some changes in the rules, and we'll do a catch-up webinar to help people understand what the changes in the rules are. But please take advantage of this opportunity, as it's such a major issue for us. And also, a couple leaders calls from now, we will have one dedicated just for advocacy on student debt issues, and we'll have the prominent student advocacy groups on the call to talk with us about a little bit about what they're doing, but how to get our arms around how the student debt issues can affect mortgages, especially if you're on an income-based program, and some other issues that directly affect our work. So it's an area we'll do some work in going ahead in the future. Okay, so let's dive in now into oops, I think we skipped one there. I think we're out of order. Okay, so let's go to the internet marketing using Google AdWords, and essentially we have had an ongoing conversation about how more effectively to message housing counseling and how to market more effectively. And Leah Coldham has been terrific at kind of raising some of these issues in the context of the coalition of HUD intermediaries, and kind of brought this idea. I guess there was a meeting that HUD had done for intermediaries and stakeholders where she kind of introduced this as an idea, and one of their affiliates in Fort Worth, Texas, the Tarrant County group, has actually been doing this and testing it out. And we'll have Donna Van Nies from that group as well. So Leah, let me open up, and looks like we did transition here. Good. So Leah, welcome. So Leah, are you still on mute by any chance? So Leah.
Hi.
There we go. Okay.
Good. Okay. Like I'm not on mute, but I guess I was. All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much to Bruce and Matthew for having us on the call today. I'm Leah Coldham. I'm the Director of Housing Counseling Programs at the Housing Partnership Network, which is a HUD intermediary, among other things, and I'm also one of the co-chairs of the Coalition of HUD Housing Counseling Intermediaries at the moment as well. So, so Bruce kindly asked me to be on the call today with the folks from Tarrant County Housing Partnership to talk about Google AdWords and Google Ad Grants coming out of a meeting with HUD in August. And I think that this topic really addresses two big challenges that the counseling industry is facing right now, and the first one is doing more with less, and really working on ways to increase our capacity where we can through new partners and new programs like Google Grants, and also technology. And I think this is an intersection of those two things. And then the second is really this need to market ourselves better across the industry. I mean, we are the best kept secret in the home buying process. And I know none of us want to be the best kept secret. We want to be the go-to person when somebody thinks about buying a home. And so this is a way for us, I think, as individual organizations to get our message out, but also as an industry to get our message out. Because if every single organization is able to take advantage of Google AdWords and Google Ad Grants, I think we can really amplify the message that, when you're buying a home, go to a housing counselor first. So, diving into the details of what Google AdWords and Ad Grants are. So, I think we've all been on Google, right? And you see the ads that come up. So some of the content that comes up is from the search engine, but there are also, ads across the top and sides of any Google search. And so what Google has done is that you can actually, purchase ads and you bid on certain words as part of that. And what Google has done philanthropically is to create this Google Ad Grants program where nonprofits can get $10,000 a month free in Google AdWords ads. You do need to be a 501c3 nonprofit to take advantage of it. And then you're able to, purchase these AdWords. And so there's sort of a it looks like it's kind of a three-step process. First, you have to apply as a nonprofit to get a Google nonprofit account. And then you create a Google AdWords account, and then you connect these two accounts, and you're ready to go. And basically, what the program does is it gives you $10,000 a month free, and you have $2 per ad as part of that $10,000. So there is a cap. And you basically pay for positions. So unfortunately, some of the work that we do is expensive in terms of the word. So homeownership is a fairly expensive word to bid on. So I think one of the things about doing this all together that would be really great is that we can refine our keywords and phrases together as a group and share what's working, and share the creative words that we're coming up with together to really increase our impact. So I will actually stop there. We can go to the next slide, which is a great segue to Tarrant County Housing Partnership, which is doing a great work in this area. And so I will pass it on to Donna to kind of give you all a really great example of how you can use these as an organization. So thanks. Thanks, Donna.
Leah, appreciate that. We are a housing nonprofit agency located in Fort Worth, Texas. Our service area is Tarrant County, but it's obviously close to Dallas and another entitlement city, Arlington. And we got a grant to do a digital campaign, and it was total for about $8,000. So as nonprofits, we don't have large advertising budgets, so we were trying to maximize the dollars that we had been given, and we looked into doing this campaign with Google AdWords, Facebook advertising, some email marketing, and then also search engine optimization. So we used sort of 4 really great internet tools to maximize our advertising campaign. We have 3 core lines of business: down payment assistance, housing counseling, and then we also do affordable housing development. So we had about 5 different ad campaigns, all related to those 3 core lines of business. For Google AdWords, we spent a little over $3,200 for our campaign that lasted about 3 months. But I think the best thing that we did to start out with is the search engine optimization. We worked with our website hosting company, and they helped us sort of reconfigure our web pages. They helped us with keyword research, search tags, things that would optimize our dollars. And that really was a great sort of first step. When you do your Google AdWords campaign, they give you suggestions, but it's also good to kind of maybe do some research ahead of time. Our 5 target campaigns, as I mentioned, they're around down payment assistance, closing counseling, which included foreclosure prevention, and then our units for sale. And you'll see an example here of one of our sample ads, want to own your own home. We had another ad that ran specifically for foreclosure prevention counseling that said, house payment late, take control, get help today, free counseling for any homeowner, and then it had our website. Some of the keywords that were our top performing keywords were homes in Arlington, first-time home buyers, houses, Fort Worth, homes for rent in Arlington, homes for sale in Arlington, Fort Worth, and Dallas. And then we also had services for homeowners, homeowner benefits. Those were some of the top performing keywords that we utilized in our campaign, but I think you get quite a bit. I think our research resulted in about 50 different keywords that we were going to use, and we just, once we set up the campaign with certain keywords, then we were able to watch the analytics and see what was performing the best, and then we were able to adjust and prioritize the keywords that were really resulting in a lot of impressions. Through that campaign, we actually just for that 3-month period, our campaign resulted in almost 260,000 total impressions, which is really incredible for, just $3,200. That's the number of times our ads appeared as a result of a search on Google. Additional to that, we received another 20,000 impressions, or number of times our ads were seen on other networks such as Gmail, YouTube, and other websites that display Google ads. I think the great thing about a Google AdWords campaign is the analytics. It's part of your campaign. You can go in and watch and see how your ads are performing, and you can make adjustments. So if you set up your campaign, you can set up for how much money you want to spend, what dates you want it to run, the length. You can base it on geography, behavior of the website user, and demographics. So you can really target your audience for when you want your ads to appear, which obviously helps your dollars go further and be more specific. As you can see from the website traffic and classes, the results from that, from this slide, it's just really incredible. We used our baseline attendance in our counseling classes of 831, and as at the end of the campaign, we were up to over 1,500 participants in those classes. So I think it was like a 89% increase over what we had seen in the previous year. And then on the next slide for social media engagement,
Donna, can I ask you a quick question on those numbers? Just so
yeah.
it looks like the first 3 months actually had a slight decline.
Correct.
Did it take 3 months to get traction, or was that just startup, or what's your sense on that? I mean, how quickly do you get responses, I guess, is the question here.
Yeah, I think we tried out different keywords, and we were watching how it was performing, and so we made adjustments to our campaign. And I think that really helps, is to see what's working and what's not working. Obviously, just basic nonprofit schedule in October, December, not a lot of people are looking to buy a house because it's coming up on the holidays. So we generally see a decline in that period anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was really the decline in that particular period. But it does take a little bit to get geared up on the campaign. As you can see that it kept continuing to increase. So on social media engagement, as you can see, affordable housing is not something that really people engage in. It's something that I think we all struggle with, is trying to get people to talk about what we do and connect with what we do and see the relevance in it. But it was quite an incredible campaign. I think the results are really great. We started out with 149 followers on our Facebook page, and by the end of the campaign, we're almost at 3,000. So, and to spend only $8,000 total on all of the campaign, I think was definitely well worth it, and a model that I think lots of nonprofits should take a look at.
Fascinating. And when you talk about buying, either Leah or Donna, whoever wants to answer this, when you talk about buying words, are those the headline words, or are they every word in the ad?
Well, the words, the keywords are specific, like home buyer, home ownership, homes for sale, first-time home buyers, first-time buyers. That's the keywords that you actually put in. Now the ad is, obviously quite, more lengthy, and it explains, more of what the searchers, could possibly want to see. But you actually just use words in your campaign. It's kind of behind the scenes. The ad is something separate.
Good, and that's that search engine optimization, the SEO. That's that,
right.
That concept that Google picks things up, what people are looking for, and matches them with these ads.
Right.
And just to maybe tie it in a little bit more with what we had discussed with the grants that are available to nonprofits. So with that, as Leah mentioned, it's up to $10,000 per month, and they cap it at the highest that you can bid is $2 per search term, so that they obviously have their logarithm in that when there's a certain search, everybody that's has those keywords will have a bid in, and then they'll kind of rank results according to the bids. So you can bid up to $2 per set of search terms.
And maybe worth.
You can blend it, I think, with paying as well. So I think that you can supplement with your own payment. Donna, I don't know if you know the answer to that, but I think you can blend it so that you can go above $2. You just can't use the ad grants for that.
Yeah, that's correct.
So one of the thoughts coming out of this is whether we want to try to do some kind of broader campaign for the housing counseling community where we encourage as many of you as possible to go out and do this. And the idea might be, let's first do a kind of a test run, understand what words might work the best, and learn how to do the process. Learn how to get signed up, and then learn how to do the process. But then maybe we could try to have a day in the spring where it's Housing Counseling Google Day or something, and do a little bit of everybody doing it together, and maybe do some media on it, try to get some visibility, and try to build up something. And then, maybe it'll have a life of its own that we can build to increase visibility. But I love the idea of doing things that both drive business to the counseling agencies, but also broaden the public awareness of housing counseling, which I think Leah framed that originally for us here, and I think that's really valuable. So here's the idea, I think, at this point is that we'll put together a Survey Monkey, well, actually 2 Survey Monkeys. The first one will be just to find out who's interested in being part of it, and then we'll create basically a listserv for those folks. And the second Survey Monkey will be what are our learnings and what are we seeing in terms of experience, and some way of evaluating it so that we can start spreading out the learnings and grow this. But I'm hoping that there's interest in the field for people to try to do this, and I think the first job in the tier of doing this is to sign up for the Google nonprofit status. Is that correct, Leah? Am I describing it properly?
Yeah, you do have to sign up for both. So there are 2 independent processes to sign up for the nonprofit account and then the Google AdWords account.
So first go for nonprofit, and then go for the AdWords account, and then let's start trying these out. So in our summary, when we put out after the call, we'll have links to well, at least to the first Survey Monkey, and try to build up a base of groups that want to try this out. And let's see what we can learn here.
So there's a bunch of questions then.
Okay, good.
So could you, Donna, just kind of clarify, I think there's a little bit of confusion on a couple points. One is if you could just kind of summarize what the different parts of your outreach campaign were. So maybe if we can just start with that, if you could just give an overview again of the different things that you included.
Sure. We did the Google AdWords campaign, which is about $3,200, and then we did some advertising on Facebook. We spent about another $3,400 on that, and then we did the search engine optimization, which was through our website host, and that was about $950. And then we also did some email marketing. We used Constant Contact, which pretty much everybody uses now, and did some targeted email campaigns for our database of subscribers. So total of all of those things, we spent about $8,000, and I think it really helped to have all of that, going at the same time. It really sort of maximized the dollars that we had, and they worked together. So those were the 4 things that we did for the digital campaign.
And I think the other thing that maybe I'll just answer this, there's some confusion on, I think, because you all had a grant that you used to fund it.
Right.
So you were not taking advantage of the Google the grants that that we had discussed.
Correct.
So I think that had thrown people off. So,
okay, yeah. We did not.
We have we have some comments. We have Rebecca Sen let us know that her organization is currently doing it, and she said they're having a hard time using up all of the $10,000 a month. So it is a pretty generous amount. And then let's see. There was a question about what your goals were in terms of.
Our goals were several. Obviously, we just wanted to increase awareness of our agency. I think Leah mentioned that in her overview. Is we are a best kept secret. We've had grants go away because we couldn't get it out the door. So just increasing awareness of the resources available. We're constantly competing with law firms and things that offer foreclosure prevention counseling, and you have to pay them $1,500, whereas we're free, but we can't compete and have TV commercials. So that was the primary goal, was to just increase our awareness, and then obviously do some targeted campaigns towards increasing our attendance to our homebuyer classes and our free counseling, and then the sale of our homes.
And then someone else had asked if you had seen an increase of people coming in. So I went back to that slide, but if maybe you could just recap what you saw.
Yeah, over the campaign, we did see an increase in attendance in all of our classes. We held some rather large foreclosure prevention workshops. So we had to add a couple of those, and then we also added more classes, based on the response we were getting. We were, having to cut off registration so quickly. Once we opened a class, we started adding more classes.
Great.
So actually, if it's okay with you, Donna, you gave us some more detailed materials, including copies of ads that you used. Would it be okay if we circulated that to the group?
Oh yeah, all of it, no problem
Great.
at all.
We had a few questions about how to go about applying. I think Bruce said that we'll circulate something so folks can know how to do that.
And just to make sure, Matthew, do we have something that explains how to apply? Or Leah, do you have something that explains that?
Google has very useful instructions online.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There may be a problem with the link that we'll need. I tried setting it up for us just as a test, and there was a problem with one link, but we will make sure that's sorted out before we circulate anything. Maybe we'll just do one more question, which is what did you find to be your top 3 key terms?
Homes, first-time home buyers, and let's see. Yeah, and then home ownership. Home ownership, first-time home buyers, and homes. We did, homes in Arlington. We did homes in cities. So I don't know, I can't recall, unfortunately, whether it was particular homes, but I think it was in the particular city. And then first-time home buyers, and then home ownership were our top key word searches, which are expensive, as Leah mentioned, because you've got real estate, realtors and real estate companies that are competing for those keywords as well.
And then real quickly, someone had asked if the Google grants are competitive, and they are not. They're available to all 501c3s.
Wonderful. Well, this is very helpful, and let's see if we can't build up a good core of groups that are participating in this, and then we may revisit this in a couple months once we've learned what people are seeing in the field. And I'm very interested in this idea of maybe in the spring or something like that we create an event around it and do some publicity and see if we can't build something from it. Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody, and especially good shout out to the Tarrant County Housing Partnership because you guys really provide us with high level content. It's very, very helpful. And thanks,
You're
Leah,
welcome.
for being the leader on this.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's move on to the world of HAMP and what will replace HAMP. And the context here is that the Treasury has, at the encouragement of a lot of people, advocates and people inside the administration, has led a conversation with servicers, advocates, and regulators about what will replace HAMP. And frankly, there's a broad range of opinions, and some servicers want to do the kind of income-based modification programs that exist and keep moving along that path even without the HAMP subsidy. Some are arguing that there should be only a streamlined modification, which means that there's little or no documentation required, and that the mod is based a lot like Tier 2 on market rate loans. The plus side is that anybody can qualify for it. The downside might be that it's not matched to affordability. And there's kind of a broad-ranging conversation going on, and we are pleased that housing counseling is in the middle of this conversation, but we really need to sort of think about what it is, what are the positions we want to take, and how do we want to shape it. And so we've invited in Ellie Pepper from Empire Justice Center and Justin Thomas from CEI in Maine as two practitioners, and there might be one or two more people who want to join us on this conversation. But the idea is that let's start this, very much counting on you providing your input on this either during the call or afterwards, and let's try to really think about how to take advantage of this moment. And maybe I'll just give one more sentence about kind of what the moment is. So December 2016 is likely when HAMP will end. The administration could choose to have it go into the next year. There's a strong feeling among at least some people in the administration that they don't want to have to throw this into the next administration, and the next administration has to figure it out and learn it again. You know, we've argued that it should be extended, and we'll argue that again in different forums. But you know, it's very likely, it's certainly not going to go on much longer. If there's another extension, it would only be for a year. But good that we're in the middle of the conversation of what might happen to it. What's a complication is that Treasury won't be involved in it at all. HAMP was what gave Treasury the authority to do what they're doing. So it then falls back on who are the regulators. Well, it's the CFPB. And then for the banks, it's the OCC and the Fed. And I guess the FDIC might have some role in it as well. But the CFPB in many ways has the lead, and certainly for a NationStar or an Ocwen or a Green Tree, those are all institutions that are not banks and would be regulated by the CFPB. The CFPB did not mandate in their servicing standards that servicers have to provide a modification to anybody who qualifies for it. And for reasons whether we agree with them or not, they felt like they didn't have the legal ability to do that. And so it does mean that CFPB is, at this point, we think, not inclined to impose a modification standard or requirement on the industry. On the other hand, if we could figure out with the industry what a modification standard would look like that we agree and they agree, then we could go to the CFPB and say, this is what we think should happen, and will you be willing to enforce it? And obviously that's tremendously in our interest to help our consumers. Why is it in the interest of the servicers? Well, they are in a changing environment where they're going to be under the continuing to be under the magnifying glass of how to operate under the existing rules. And if they have a predictable, acceptable standard, that makes their lives easier as well. So if we all can agree on something, that's a huge plus. The range of what the servicers are looking at is pretty broad, so who knows if we can get there, but that's what we're working on. And in that context, we can also work on, can we get a uniform application like the RMA, that's similar to the RMA and something like that. So hopefully what you can help us think through is what those all might look like. So on that note, we have Ellie and Jason. And let's make sure we can hear everybody. Ellie and Jason, are you there?
I'm here. Yeah,
I am. Okay, excellent. Okay. So let me just throw out a kind of the broad question initially is what do you think is good about HAMP that we want to keep, and is there anything we need to think about getting rid of? Are there any broad things you want to say initially before we talk about the application or anything like that?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I want to say about HAMP ending and the future of modification and loss mitigation in general is that it seems to me as though the HAMP program really encouraged servicers to participate and work something out with homeowners. And so I fear that without something, there will be less likelihood for servicers to offer, reasonable loss mitigation options to homeowners. So I think that this is a really great time to have this conversation, and I appreciate that NHRC is bringing it up because I think it's going to become more and more important as the months go by.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think that HAMP has been, because of how the program was structured, kind of the carrot for a lot of these servicers to participate. My fear is, even though this is, as Ellie said, a great time to have that conversation, I think it's a precarious time too, because with that, presumably the subsidy, the carrot that they were being given to participate in this, it's not going to exist going forward. So what else, I wonder if the conversation will ultimately be what else can we provide to them, whether that's, continuing to have the conversation about how important housing counseling is in future delinquencies, to have them continue to be good actors around this. Obviously, interest rates at a subsidized level are probably not going to be what they are now. But right, this is the time to have that conversation for sure.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, the meeting the Treasury convened last week had people in the servicing field, but not the people that we usually talk to as much. It was more the people who do the mechanics around loss mitigation. And it was interesting, there was less awareness, for example, about the NeighborWorks Urban Institute study on NFMC and the performance there and those things that, we really kind of hands down, that is a great study, and it totally shows the value of, you're more likely to get a modification, you're more likely to get a deeper modification, you're much less likely to re-default, and way less likely to go into foreclosure at the end. So we're circulating that to these folks as well. But there's clearly some education that needs to happen here. And on the big question of streamlined mod, which means easy to get, right, no documentation problems, versus income-based mod, does anybody want to weigh in?
Well, at least in my experience with Streamline, and it probably shouldn't be this way, but sometimes you get what you pay for, and that, for a homeowner, that is, unfortunately, in terms of time, effort, and energy, and for counselors as well, how much time and energy sometimes goes into those mods is how much are you really getting out of them. I think if it's a Streamline modification that truly makes an impact for people, that's great. If it's a streamlined modification that almost looks like kind of a churning mechanism for servicers to kind of restart a 30-year clock and front-load interest, then absolutely not. I think that's a really sharp edge to walk sometimes.
And let's add that they're talking about a 40-year clock.
Or a 30 or 40 years.
Right. In fact, one of the tools that they're doing is to make it a more expensive loan by extending out the term for 40 years. Exactly, so it's right. Reinforcing your point here.
Right, and I'll piggyback on that to say, in what I've seen with GSE streamlines in New York State is that sometimes it's a really good thing that it comes through. It's very simple for the homeowner. It's better than what they had. It works. It helps them, particularly when it's a homeowner who had a short-term problem that got them into the delinquency, and now that financial problem has been resolved and they can pay their mortgage again. The problem that I see with it very often is that the streamline gets put out there either right in the middle of or very near the end of an already existing modification process that the homeowner is going through with the servicer, and it sometimes will derail that better modification process because the GSE streamline offer seems to indicate that if you don't accept this one and then you're not eligible for the other one, you are just going to be out of luck. And so it kind of turns into a little bit of a bullying tactic. So that's my only concern with the streamline process. I think there's a lot of good possibilities with it. The concern always is how it ends up getting used.
So I'm actually glad you brought up this question about short-term versus long-term, because that's another kind of pivot point that is in these discussions, and FHFA has raised this. There was an interesting, so NCLC, so Elise Cohen was asked that question, and her comment was really a little different, and I'm very interested in what we think, and certainly people should put in their question box as well. That her comment was that for low-income people, there's no such thing as a short-term problem. That as you have a reduction in hours and you're making less and you need to renegotiate your mortgage, well, maybe your hours may come back, but then there's an illness in the family and there's a layoff of the spouse. I mean, there's these things continue to happen, and that it's better to look at, and I've been arguing actually that all the solutions should be life of loan if they're going to be long-term solutions, not a 5-year step up, that we ought to just get past that point and just really think of it as life of loan. Is there a good way to think about short-term versus long-term, or should we just argue that you just fix the loan and give the family a long-term solution no matter what the case is?
Well, Bruce, I like your thinking in that it should just be across the board a lifetime solution for the loan, because even with a family who has maybe they're not considered low income, who knows in 5 years what's going to happen, and who knows in 10 years what's going to happen. Things happen, so a lifetime modification seems to make more sense to me. And giving the opportunity that you get more than one bite at the apple. That's been an ongoing conversation, right?
Yep.
To get more than one bite at the apple for a modification, because again, life happens and things change, and you never know. So I go along with that, and I agree with Elise that when it comes to folks who are in low-income positions, they often don't end up in higher-income positions, and it becomes a kind of a cycling process.
Yeah, and I agree with that as well. I think that, again, you have a lot of people that it's just chronic delinquency, and it may be true for their mortgage product, and it's probably true for a lot of the credit that they have, so it's not exclusive to their home. But on the flip side, for lenders to complain about it, those are often their most profitable as well, because someone, unfortunately, that stays in that perpetual month behind, 2 months behind, those fees make those their best loans, the ones that they want to retain, in some cases. So I think exactly for a true short-term situation, the things that, maybe a 1 month, 2 month issue, some of those those programs are already out there, and sometimes may be underutilized by servicers already in the terms of forbearances and things like that. But anything that's a long-term solution should last for a long term. You can't have a long-term solution that has a short-term lifespan. So exactly what you were saying.
And I think that this is also just kind of talking about, you mentioned, Jason, the kind of chronic delinquency in other areas of folks' lives, and this is the exact argument for why people should be referred for housing counseling, whether it's pre-purchase or post-purchase non-delinquency or delinquency. Housing counseling can benefit the borrower all along that process, and benefit the lender, servicer as well.
So partly we're trying to figure out what the mechanisms will look like going forward. So one of the tools that we have that's a common tool is every servicer that's part of HAMP uses the RMA. The RMA will go away, and so the question is, can there be a uniform document? And in the Treasury meeting, actually, we had a kind of a meeting with a bunch of the servicers in Treasury afterwards, just for housing counseling, and we kind of put this out there. And it was Stephen Smith from NationStar said, well, they will use the application of their biggest customer, and the biggest customer is Fannie Mae. So they're making the argument that they should be using the UBAF form. So the in case not everybody's on top of the vocabulary here, it's the Uniform Borrower Assistance Form, sometimes called 710 or UBAF, and and we sent the link out to it before this call so people could take a look at it. It looks like we'll have a conversation we'll be able to have a conversation around this idea, probably through Hope Now, but involving the servicers and involving us and involving Treasury. So I don't know if the two of you had a chance to look at UBAF, and do you think that this meets our needs, and if not, what's missing, or what are your proposals?
Well, I'm very familiar. I see it in my sleep sometimes already. But I mean, the information captured is very similar. I took it and I looked at the most recent RMA here this morning as well, just in comparison. And with HAMP going away, one of the things I wonder about, because the RMA utilizes a lot of space to differentiate rental homes versus primary residences because of the nature of the program. So the first thing I would say is our servicers going to, if they want to use that as a streamlined application, is the idea that it doesn't matter, and it shouldn't matter, in whatever the new program might look like, whether this is a rental property or if it's somebody's primary residence, because that's at least a page and a half of the RMA. The Dodd-Frank certification as being part of the RMA, that's very useful, because that eliminates a homeowner from having to provide a separate Dodd-Frank, which now they have to do when a servicer is using the 710 form. So to incorporate, if the Dodd-Frank is indeed still a requirement, which I imagine it will be, why not incorporate that into the 710, and that just eliminates, I mean, just from a logistics standpoint, that seems to make it easy.
So I would also say that they should add to the Uniform Borrower Assistance Form the page that for the RMA is page 7. It's the one referring folks to the HOPE hotline and how to find a HUD-approved agency in their area. What I do like about the UBAF is that it's shorter. It's, there's a lot of paper, for the RMA, and as you point out, Jason, it's related a lot to the rental versus owner-occupied properties. But it also makes it very clear in this form what it is that you need to prove that you have a hardship. And the RMA doesn't do that, and often lenders and servicers will that's what they use to kind of keep the process delayed over and over again, is asking for certain documentation. And so this is nice because it's laid right out what it is that is potentially going to be useful. So a couple of things that I would want to see changed about it is on the very first page it asks for, I like that it asks this question, but I would change the wording a little. It says, have you contacted a credit counseling agency? And I would ask that it say a housing counseling agency, because housing counseling and credit counseling are two very different things. I think that a borrower might get a little confused in the budget section for monthly household expenses and debt payments. It says first mortgage payment, but it doesn't make it clear that that's only for principal and interest. It's not the full principal, interest, tax, insurance, homeowner fee payment that's being asked for. So it may, a homeowner may overstate what they're paying out each month. So just some kind of little tweaks like that, but overall I think it could be usable with some of these changes and additions.
Yeah. And one of the things and this is again just another small thing, but something that I, by doing hundreds of these over the years, have run into is, this ambiguous other category in expenses. Routinely, people will put a number in there, and then lo and behold, the servicer comes back a week later and says, "Oh, we need you to explain that number." So, I would think perhaps if there's without having to make it too much more intrusive, some of the servicers have modified this UBAF, I think Wells Fargo has done that, to include the actual categories. So when a homeowner fills this thing out once, then they don't have to go back and say, okay, now I have to do another whole worksheet to say what was my electric bill and how much was my heating expense. Just put it on there the first time, and then, okay, now we can chop 7 to 10 days off, a review turnaround. And that happens fairly routinely whenever we use either of these forms that don't specifically ask for those things to be broken out.
Well, and that's just to bring this up very quickly, but you mentioned Wells Fargo, and what I'll say is Wells Fargo tends to require the UBAF as well as the RMA, which further confuses homeowners because the numbers end up being different on each document. And so Wells Fargo turns it into, often turns it into an investigation as to whether or not they're telling the truth about their finances. Right. So
I call it forensic underwriting.
Yes, right. Another point would be that it would be really nice to have just one form that everybody uses for all loss mitigation.
And why would the numbers be different in UBAF versus RMA?
Because it's just the way that they ask for the expenses and debt payments. As Jason listed, it says other on the UBAF, and the RMA is a little bit more specific.
Yeah. And a lot of times where you'll run into this problem, I think the people that are utilizing housing counseling and using our agencies don't necessarily run into that issue. But it's the people that, okay, I'm sitting down on a Tuesday night and I've submitted this to RMA and I think I've got it all done and I send it in. Of course, maybe I don't keep a copy of that form. And so I get this other form in the mail that says, now we need you to do this one. Well, geez, I don't remember what I put on the last form, so I'm going to fill it out again. And, hopefully those things coincide, but the reality is that often they might not.
So very good about, so it sounds like UBAF has some promising things. Do we have anybody weighing in that we need to hear from, Matthew? Is that?
I can share a couple quick really just thoughts, not questions. So one person said she thought that the borrower should be reviewed, basically have their application reviewed, determined what programs they're eligible for, and just be presented with all of those options, and agreed that they should be for life of the loan, and also thought that interest rates should be fixed. Also said the comment got a little cut off, but I think it's saying that Ocwen has a very good RMA. It includes wording for the 710 form, the Dodd-Frank, and the GM form. And someone else just jumped in with some thoughts on short-term versus long-term, and short-term being more for hardships that have some short-term hardships such as temporary layoff or illness. And the need for assistance also for at-risk homeowners. So I guess folks who are not quite there, but that there needs to be assistance for those folks.
One of the things I wrote down initially about this, which isn't form-centric, but practically speaking, the program, two big hurdles right now with the way it exists, and hopefully they'll both be gone, is this origination date of January 1st of 2009. My assumption is that any new program isn't going to have an origination date cut off like that, because the longer the program goes on, fewer and fewer people that happen to fall behind after that date simply, get cut out of that program. And also a very hard and fast, like for example, 31% on a HAMP 1. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be a line in the sand. HAMP 2 is a little bit more of maybe a model where there is a range of percentages that are allowable, because you'll get a lot of people that you spend a month fighting about whether it's 31% or 30.49%, and those people, even though they're so close to the assistance, fall short of it because of a few percentage points.
Yeah, that's an interesting kind of question, and part of so there's a push among some advocates to have transparency on what the model is, which tends to encourage people to be hard and fast. But back in the day, so I did delinquency counseling before HAMP, and this was in an environment where most people got payment agreements, and if you got a modification, it was a step mod, so you might get a reduction in interest rate for a month or 3 months, and then it would step up half a point or whatever it is until it got back to the old rate. And so it was all meant to be very short-term stuff, and we would negotiate modifications. They would be front and back end based, so that they also took into account people's total expenses. And they were generally almost all of them were life of loan resolutions, and sometimes we got payment reductions. I mean, that was a completely different environment, but hardly anybody was getting that besides those counseling agencies that really had pretty aggressive programs and relationships. And HAMP did change that in huge ways and established this uniform affordability standard, which was a huge step forward. And we had gotten a lot of services to do it, but not all of them, and suddenly HAMP really got almost the entire industry on that page. So we're going to have to figure out all those things. Looks like we're out of time here. So this is going to be an ongoing conversation, and there will be more meetings in DC with the key players to try to develop more of a model around this. And I'll just add, I mean, I think what is in the back of everybody's mind, and I want to frame, and when we talk to the policymakers, we're going to be framing it this way, is that we are also at a big threshold for the industry, which is that it's very clear that the housing counseling funding in the form of NFMC is going away, that the HHF funds are dwindling down or have disappeared in a number of states, been used up in a number of states, that we're really at a cusp here where we've got a very experienced, very savvy workforce, and we could just say, okay, let's have them just become pre-purchase counselors and let's dismantle the whole thing, or we can say, let's build a pipeline that's a sustainable business model that has built into it the routine funding that counseling agencies get paid for the work that they do for servicers and investors, and that we have a model that will be a sustainable business flow going forward, independent of federal funding. And obviously that's what we're pushing for. It's uphill fight, but it's absolutely going to be part of what we're trying to encourage people to think about. So thank you very much, Ellie and Jason. This is the first step in a long conversation we're going to have for a while, but very helpful to have these specifics and your thoughts on this.
Thank you, Bruce.
Good. let's see, really quickly. So we need more groups to join NHRC. I mean, we're becoming a member gives you access to our escalation charts. There's some guides to funding and so down payment assistance programs of the Federal Home Loan Bank. There's a range of things like that, discounts at various technology providers and foundation programs. But really the reason people join is because they're supporting this work and keeping us as an independent organization. So joining is relatively easy. There's a fee structure based on the size of your budget, just go to our website, upper right-hand corner. There's it's under membership. You can click in and get the membership form. You could email me, and I'd be glad to send it to you. I always like to get those emails. I would love to get more of those emails. So let's do it. Please think seriously about having your organization join. Good news is that you get to be in on the morning session and the luncheon, and we do have a special listserv for people who are members. And we just circulated a notice about a fellowship around financial capability that was distributed by one institution, and we'll regularly do those kind of things about letting you know about funding opportunities. And there's an opportunity to be part of a book on it's being written about foreclosure stuff, and we let members know about it so they could step up and participate in it. So lots of good things like that. Think about joining, and certainly about joining our meeting in DC. Our next call will be in 2 weeks, and we're still shaping the agenda on this, but we will continue on this work about the longer-term sustainability of the counseling industry. So appreciate all the good work you're doing in the field, appreciate all the information that people have been sharing with us. This is the fodder that we use to really shape our programs. So thanks for everybody's commitment on this work. All right, have a good 2 weeks until we talk to you next.